The Kotzker Rebbe has an amazing analogy about a Jew who's standing in the presence of the actual physical Beis HaMikdash. And he's watching the Kohanim, and he's watching the Avodah, and he's watching the Korbanos, the sacrifices. He's watching people running around involved in the holiest forms of worshiping Hashem. But this particular Jew, in the Kotzker Rebbe's analogy, has no context to understand what it is that's really going on. He's never been to the Beis HaMikdash before. He doesn't really appreciate the sanctity of the Beis HaMikdash and the true Torah nature of what it is that's going on. So from his perspective, all he sees is young men running around in short pants, barefoot, with large pieces of meat, cooking them, blood being sprayed in all different directions. And the person who's watching this gets so frustrated. Why would people consider this place such a sacred place? He spits on the ground and goes, "Phew, this place is a butchery. Butcheries I have in my own hometown. No need to come all the way here to Yerushalayim to see a simple butchery." Yes, said the Kotzker Rebbe, if you don't understand what it is that you're seeing, you can be standing in the presence of the actual Beis HaMikdash, and you can think it's a dirty butchery. Or in the words of the psychologists like to say, we tend to think that we see with our eyes. It's not true. We don't see anything with our eyes. We see with our brains. Our brains use our eyes like two windows to look out into the world, to look out around us and to process what it is that they're seeing. But it's not the eyes themselves that see, it's the brain and the presence of mind. And if we don't understand what it is that's going on, then our actual ability to physically see it is impaired. Again, in the words of the Kotzker Rebbe, you can be looking at the Beis HaMikdash and see a butchery. I say this because probably the most difficult part of the whole story of Yosef to understand is how in heaven's name it's possible, that his brothers didn't recognize him. I mean, these were actual brothers of his. They departed from him, or he departed from them when he was 17 years old. He wasn't a child. Yes, Rashi says when he left he didn't have a beard, and now he did. But even that's difficult to understand. Therefore, they couldn't physically recognize him. I mean, they stood in his presence. They had conversations. Yosef revealed to them all sorts of intimate secrets about their own lives, and they couldn't recognize that it was Yosef. And even in the moment when finally, in this week's Parsha, Yosef finally does tell the brothers, "Ani Yosef, it's me, it's Yosef." Still, the Torah says, the brothers couldn't respond to him, ki nivhalu miponav. They were shocked that this was in fact Yosef. When they come back to Yaakov Avi and Yaakov their father, and they tell him, Oid Yosef cha, Yosef is alive, in fact he's the ruler over all of Mitzrayim, the Torah says, lohem and lohem, even Yaakov didn't believe them. And the question is why? Why is it so difficult for the brothers to recognize him? Why is it so shocking that Yosef is still alive? Why is this generating shock and fear and disbelief among everybody? The brothers knew they hadn't actually killed Yosef. How could they stand there in his presence and have with him conversation after conversation and still not realize and recognize they were talking to their own brothers? This is unbelievable. And the answer, of course, is not that they couldn't just physically see it, but they couldn't psychologically process it. There was a blockage that they experienced psychologically and, of course, spiritually that prevented them from recognizing their brother Yosef. What was it? It was, of course, Yosef's ability to be both Yosef HaTzadik, to be a tzaddik in every sense of the word, to retain his sanctity and his purity, while at the same time being in Mitzrayim, and not just being in Mitzrayim, the most immoral and vile place in the world, but being Moshe b'chol Eretz Mitzrayim, the ruler over all of Mitzrayim. This was something that the brothers couldn't wrap their heads around. How can the same person be both the greatest tzaddik, like Yosef HaTzadik, and at the same time engage and rule over the whole world? The brothers couldn't wrap their heads around it. In the words of the Pasuk says, Heim loy hikiruhu, they didn't recognize him. Chassidus explains this to mean not just that they didn't recognize him now when they stood in front of him and he was the ruler of Mitzrayim. Heim lo hikiru, they never recognized him. They never recognized Yosef's ability to bridge these two worlds, to be strong enough to be able to go into Mitzrayim and rule over it and still remain a Jew, and a proud Jew, and an intact Jew. This, of course, is the reason why the brothers chose to be shepherds and remain separate from the world. But in the end, Yosef's brothers and Yaakov all go down to Mitzrayim. And Yosef provides for them. Yosef feeds them. And this, of course, means not just that Yosef provides for them physically, but Yosef provides for them spiritually. Yosef taught his family the abilities, the true, profound, unfathomable abilities that a Jew truly has if you dig deep enough. Yosef taught his brothers that a Jew has nothing to fear from the influences of the world. Yosef taught his brothers and his family that a Jew can be an intact, holy, dignified, proud Jew, while at the same time, if necessary, being in Mitzrayim and ruling over Mitzrayim and providing food for Mitzrayim and engaging with Paroi on a regular basis. Yosef taught his family that a Jew can do both. Yosef taught his family that a Jew can stand up to the world and defend himself when necessary. Yosef taught his family that a Jew has nothing to fear and that the world has nothing on us. Yosef taught his family that we can have both. We can be the greatest tzaddikim in the world. We can engage in learning Torah and doing mitzvahs and serving Hashem. And at the same time, we can be proud Jews and show the rest of the world that we are not afraid of them, and that they will never, ever be able to make us intimidated or scared in any way. Yosef's lesson is alive and well today. Have a wonderful Shabbos.